Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Thursday, August 14th, 2025, and the Federalization of DC is in full effect. Donald Trump is taking control, and I've got video of helicopters flying overhead in DC. So it's, very freedom, very authoritarian. It's very, very interesting what's rolling out. I think if Democratic presidents had done this, people would have been upset. At the same time, the lawlessness that's going on is unbelievable. And I was saying yesterday how I think that if a prime minister came in and said, I'm going to work with the premiers to clean up these cities, these sanctuary cities, et cetera, and clean up the crime and so on and so forth, a lot of people would be in support of it. So we'll see what happens after the period of cleaning up the mess looks like, and if people feel like it's an overstep then. At this point in time, I think it's meeting probably the force, the opposing force with the necessary force to counter it, right? So like at this point in time, the criminals have been emboldened. They're everywhere. They're doing whatever they want. And in order to take control, you need to have people who are going to come in and take out the trash. And so that's what we're watching. And we'll see what happens when things normalize after. I don't know. Free program back to Canada to train newcomers only to address critical shortage in Ontario of building code officials in the province. So building inspectors are being trained exclusively newcomers. Everyone's going to, all the building inspectors are going to be newcomers. I'm sure that's going to go real well. Great job, Ontario. Government bailouts are the only solution to these ongoing trade disputes, according to our leadership, which is insane because the only real way to address any of this kind of stuff is how Trump is doing it. Bailouts are just going to harm us, really. I don't think it's going to be beneficial. I think it's going to be very, very concerning. And the problem with all of it is the fact that we're just giving government money to bail out all of these industries, but we're not solving the core issue at all. And that's weird, right? Carney is doing serious trade damage with his actions, according to the ambassador. There was an interview with one of the other podcasters with the United States ambassador. It's quite a good one, I guess. And he spells out that what Carney's doing is going to do serious damage to our trade relationship. And where we've got to start today is the fires. And the fires are a big problem. And unfortunately, it's interesting to watch. The justifications for the fires keep changing, but I don't think that's going to change anything. Like they're just throwing whatever at the wall to see what sticks. And all the new stuff adds on to the old stuff. So it's, of course, some of the time they say, we're not really worried you're going to break your leg, but what if you get surrounded by fire? And when they start making up scenarios, I feel like they've lost the argument, right? It's like saying, listen, well, hold on. We'll listen to this guy first, Tim Houston first, and then I'll tell you what I think it sounds like. But here's Tim Houston. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. The fires in Nova Scotia. And I spoke with Noel yesterday. It was wonderful to talk with him. And he says what's real and on the ground here is very different than what's being reported across the country. So it was nice to catch up with him. I'm looking forward to the kitchen table talks coming back. But here's Tim Houston talking about the fires and changing the justification for all of these restrictions. Table Salt says the justification for Nova Scotia's ban on being in nature changes again. It's no longer because you're going to start a fire with your boots. It's not because you're going to break a leg. Now it's because fire could envelop you suddenly, right? Okay. All right. Here we go.
People want to go for a hike or want to go for a walk in the woods with their dog. But how would you like to be stuck in the woods while there's a fire burning around you? I don't think anybody would want that either. So be smart, be human, don't look for loopholes. An out of control forest fire is a terrifying thing. So treat this situation with the seriousness that it deserves. We are, certainly as a government. Since last week's announcement on restrictions, 12 fines have been issued. It's certainly my hope that every single one of those is fully prosecuted and collected. It's just too serious of a situation right now. People want to go for
too serious a situation right now. Isn't that strange? Isn't that a weird thing? I think if you have to make up a situation, you go into the woods for a walk, an innocent walk, and then you find yourself enveloped by fire, right? And it is meant to make you feel fearful. it's meant to make you have images of things that, are out of your control and so on and so forth. And is it realistic? I don't know. Are you going to go walk your dog close to a forest fire? Probably not, right? You're probably going to check that kind of stuff if that's a worry. And so I think that it's weird. It's kind of akin to saying, imagine you're at the top of a really tall building and, you're trapped and you're running away from an assailant, and then the door opens and it's zombies, right? Oh, I guess that could happen, but what? In what way does this justify your draconian restrictions, Tim Houston? It's very, very strange. Very, very strange indeed. Also, I'm a little distracted. The stream is supposed to be working, and it says that I don't have any viewers. All the viewers, it says 0, but I can see people are responding to me, and that's kind of interesting. So, I guess it is working, but it doesn't tell me that it's working at all. So that's really weird. I'm going to record this and upload it as I usually do, but it's something to note. These things should work, and they're not working, and I don't know why. Here's Michelle Rempel. She's talking about the fires as well. And I think I may have changed the index that I wanted to show you. But here's Rebel News. They say Conservative MP Michelle Rempel Garner slams the federal government's wildfire prevention response efforts. 4 full wildfire seasons ago, the Liberals promised more water bombers and firefighters. Where are they? And the Liberals promise things and don't deliver at all, and don't get held accountable for that. Very weird. Here's Michelle Rempel.
Sort of the bans that are in place on hiking and other recreational activities in forested areas in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, given the wildfire considerations right now?
Sure. Well, first of all, the fear that people experience during wildfire season is something that a lot of Canadians know. I think back to what happened in Jasper National Park last year as an Albertan. And so my hearts are with them and their concern. And also with the firefighters and first responders who put their lives in harm's way during these situations. But I also think about the utter lack of action from the federal government on the issue of forest fires. I think it's four seasons ago now. 4 full wildfire seasons ago, the Liberals promised more water bombers, more firefighters. Where are they? The other thing is that my Conservative colleague Mark Dalton put forward a bill to increase the penalties for people who commit arson that causes a wildfire. So these are both measures that could have prevented and contained wildfire, and the Liberals have done nothing. So wait, my concern is this. Whenever there's a major crisis, what the Liberal government has done by their inaction has conditioned Canadians to expect that the only response they can see out of their federal government is to restrict their movement. And again, I understand that I understand the fear and concern of people in the Maritimes right now, but that the only response they get from their federal government is a tacit, well, I guess you're going to have to restrict your movement. That's not right. So, today we're calling upon the federal government to actually get serious about this issue, pass our bill, put forward the resources that they promised so that Canadians aren't put into this situation.
Noel was telling me some worrying stories just overall about everything going on with all of this. And what it looks like on the ground is very different than what they're telling us. But the solutions aren't a few weeks away. And it seems like they're trying to frame it like, oh yeah, all we have to do is give some resources. And it's more complicated than that, of course. Here is Premier of Newfoundland admitting you can't ban people from hiking and camping. And that's why they've increased the penalties and fines. And that's concerning. He's right, though. And I mentioned this the other day. Everybody drives around in their ATVs. There are paths everywhere in Newfoundland, and you can't really effectively tell people they can't go anywhere. And I looked for the images of the forest I took. I'm sure I took them driving, and I can't find them. So I have no idea where they went. Unfortunate, but true. So anyway, here's the Premier of Newfoundland. Here we go.
Is there any plan to ban people from hiking, camping like Nova Scotia and New Brunswick have, given that?
Look, it's very difficult to do that here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I mean, people literally go back and forth to their daily activities and lives and to work on ATVs. People literally do live in wooded areas, so I don't know how you ban people from their homes. That's just going to compound the problem in terms of evacuating people who live in or near woods. We felt that taking the steps with the fines will put pressure on people to be careful and to not abuse the privileges that we have in this society. So that's where we are right now.
Abuse the privileges we have in society. Oh, there's a follow-up.
Right now?
I think it's the right thing to do right now, and we need to continue to make sure we do everything we can to get the message out there. And I don't know if extra fires popping up in the St. John's area will send a louder message and a clear message, and I certainly hope it does. Again, we're talking about an extremely small percentage of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, not 99.99% or more. Understand, follow the rules when the fines were $75, let alone when they're $50,000. So we are targeting that very extreme small percentage of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that may be breaking the Forestry Act regulations.
What a strange justification. What a weird way to frame it, right? We know that most people follow the rules when the fines are $75. So now that they're $50,000, $150,000, whatever dollars, we're only targeting that small group of people who are going to fly in the face of that. That's very strange. If you admit that most people follow the rules, what's the need for the increase in the fines? Like, it's insane. All of this is just beyond the pale. It reminds me a lot of COVID. It really does. Miss Maple says St. John's, Newfoundland evacuation alert issued for the capital city as more fires erupt. Please pray for the province of Newfoundland, my birthplace. I'm heartbroken about the scale of the fires ripping through Newfoundland. And this is Miss Maple's birthplace, not mine. I was born in Ontario. So it's interesting and concerning. And again, I feel like, why aren't the premiers bringing in the weather modification people, Rainmaker and such? Why is that being ignored? I don't understand. Here is Noel yesterday sent me this. He says, look, we have weather modification laws on the books, and they have been on the books since 1985. For real. Isn't that wild? And apparently they've just expired as of the 27th of July, of July, I think. But I don't know where that is. It was on here before. But fundamentally, it's very interesting. The short title is the Weather Modification Reform or Information Act, an act to provide for the obtaining of information respecting weather modification activities. Short title, the act may be cited as the Weather Modification Information Act. Interpretation, weather modification activity defined as weather modification activity includes any action designed or intended to produce by physical or chemical means changes in the composition or dynamics of the atmosphere for the purpose of increasing or decreasing or redistributing precipitation, decreasing or suppressing hail or lightning, or dissipating fog or cloud. And it goes into records and reports, disclosures, so on and so forth. We have a whole law governing this. And we know Rainmaker is one of the companies that does this, and they were talking about how yesterday I was mentioning it, how they can bring water to places at a much cheaper rate than a desalination plant in California, so on and so forth. And I said, why are we not doing this here? If there's a high fire risk, why don't you just call these guys and say, hey, how much does it cost to make it rain on the weekend this weekend? What do you think, guys? Can we do that? And then they say, yeah, I mean, you could, if you're going to schedule rain, you could schedule it for Tuesday, Wednesday. But still, can we make it rain ASAP? Can we mitigate this fire risk? Is that totally off the table? If it's off the table, why is it off the table? Zachary says, why is Canada sending money to other countries when we can't deal with our own forest fire situation? Right. In addition to calling up the people who can make it rain, why are we not buying water bombers? Why are we not hiring and training firefighters in the off season, and so on and so forth? And we're not, and that's weird. It's very, very strange indeed. And so how do you deal with this in a way that is practical? And well, the Canadian government is just not interested in solving problems in a practical way whatsoever. They want to lock you in your house and give you just a bullshit justification and hope that you don't get too upset. But if you do get upset, they'll give you another justification, wallpapering over the other justification and admitting that it's kind of bullshit, but not really taking it off the table either, right? Like, you still might break your leg, which is nonsense. Let's talk about the invasion ongoing. This is just a bit of a wild story. Wiretap Media is reporting Michelle Rempel calling out the Canadian government for giving reduced sentences in order to keep non-citizens in country. And that's, a slap in the face to law-abiding Canadians, right? Why would we want criminals, foreign criminals, given light sentences to be criminals in Canada more, right? Nobody wants that, except for the judges who are doing it. Here's Michelle Rempel calling them out.
Since 2013, a Supreme Court ruling has permitted judges to consider immigration status when sentencing. This has been seen in several recent high-profile cases. For example, a permanent resident received a conditional sentence after being convicted of trying to purchase sexual services from a 15-year-old, as a stronger penalty would have hindered him and his wife from obtaining Canadian citizenship. Another non-citizen in Canada on a visitor's permit was convicted twice of groping an 18-year-old woman's genitals at a bar, yet received a discharge to avoid a permanent criminal record and to allow for an appeal of their deportation. Anyone seeking residence or citizenship in Canada has responsibilities as well as rights. When it comes to sentencing non-citizens, Canada has essentially adopted a form of two-tier justice where judges can and have given lighter sentences to individuals who are non-citizens by virtue of this ruling.
So that's damaging. And further, here is, if you enter the country illegally, here are some fines or punishments for entering different countries illegally. Singapore, 6 months in prison. Russia, 2 years in a labor camp. India, 8 years in prison. Pakistan, 10 years in prison. North Korea, the death penalty. Canada, the US, and Europe, free housing, healthcare, education, food, public transport, cell phones, and cash. Come on, guys. A country can only be a country if it protects its borders. Illegal immigration should be penalized. Yeah, but it's not penalized. And in fact, it is encouraged. And Doug Ford has put together a way to encourage and reward people who are coming here, newcomers, just any newcomers at all. Anybody who comes here, they can apply to this opportunity. Ontario funds free building code course. Opposition urges more action on skills gap. A free building code course? What does that mean? An Ontario college has opened applications to newcomers for a free program intended to address what it describes as a critical shortage of building code officials in the province. The provincial government is funding the training in a move that opposition politicians say is sorely needed, but that they say is just one step towards closing multiple training gaps in the province. George Brown College says its program was developed in partnership with Ontario Building Officials Association, and 50 students will be accepted this fall. Applicants must be newcomers or immigrants with a background or education in construction, engineering, or other related fields. So if you're not a newcomer with a background in construction, we don't want to hear from you. But what about construction workers who want to be Ontario building code officials now? Sorry, you've got to be a newcomer. We don't want you to speak English, and we don't want you to be white, is what they're saying, right? And that's concerning, isn't it? Don't you think? Isn't that weird? Why would they do that? Why indeed? Here is Jasmine, and she interviewed, Blaze says, wow, Canada's tariffing goods protected under the CUSMA or USMCA, they're the same thing. How is the media not reporting on this? So this is the ambassador to the United States being interviewed by Jasmine, and the interview is longer than this, and you should check it all out. But this is just a little part of it. And he says at the end that Carney is putting the USMCA, the trade deal with the United States, at risk through his actions. And I believe him. And why would our prime minister shoot ourselves in the foot like that? Here we go.
Okay, our negotiators have said...
it's been one day since the last instance of too fast speed. I like to listen to these things, right? Here we go.
Okay, our negotiators have said we are not going to implement tariffs on any products that are covered under CUSMA. Canadians have said, well, those guardrails are off. I think since April, they have been tariffing U.S. products that are part of the CUSMA agreement. Okay, the products that are covered under CUSMA are, they're going into the U.S. tariff-free, and the ones going north are covered or now have this, I think, 25% tariff on them. Okay. And so what it means is, I know from American companies, they're saying, hey, we're basically going into Canada and we can't sell because we've got a 25% tariff, while our Canadian competitors are coming into the U.S. with no tariffs at all. You put that together with the actions of your provinces where they're saying, in certain cases, they're saying, all right, we're going to first buy product from our province. If the product from our province is not available, we are going to buy Canadian. If there's not a Canadian product available, we're going to buy international. And if there's not an international product available, then we may finally consider buying American, or maybe not buying at all. Okay? I think, that the Canadians have gone on those issues, they've gone significantly further than where the U.S. has gone. Canada is calling into question the future of CUSMA. It's not the United States of America. It's Canada.
Yep. He's not wrong. It's Canada. We're doing this. We are the ones harming ourselves. And the only solution that the premiers have is more bailouts from the federal government. With that, I've got to say goodbye to the stream. I don't have any viewers. I just tweeted about this if you want to see my screen, but my screen has zeros across the board. And so goose eggs is what I was looking for. But I know that there are people watching, so I don't understand what's going on. But it's one of those things. Must be a Canada thing, right? We're super a lot like North Korea these days. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, on the stream, and we will catch you tomorrow. And for everybody else, we will carry on as soon as I know that the stream is done. Apparently, I had 36 viewers on YouTube, which is kind of normal, I guess. And it's a little early today, but it's weird that I'm not allowed to stream before 8 o'clock, I guess. I'm not sure. Anyway, here's Wab Canoe, and he's saying, we need to take care of our farmers. And I agree with him. We do need to take care of our farmers. That is an important